Good morning, everybody, or good day, or good afternoon, whichever time you're choosing to tune in here on YouTube. But thanks for coming back to the channel. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And also, welcome back to our next episode of 1,000 Words or Less. I'm very excited today to introduce our guest with us today, E.B. Bridges, or Ethan Bridges, who is here, a writer here in the state of Georgia and the author of two novels, The Runner and When the Bough Breaks. And so, Ethan, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're excited to have you here. And I just told the viewers you're from Georgia, but would you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born and raised in Athens. Bulldog for most of my life. I never went there, but, I still bleed red and black.
I will not hold that against you. I will not hold that against you.
But yeah, so I've lived in Georgia all of my life. I haven't gone out of state and lived out of state. So Georgia's my home.
Hey, it's home sweet home to me too. I've been here my whole life. It's a good place to grow up. For my viewers, you don't know what Ethan's sharing with us today, but he has actually chosen to share for his 1,000 Words or Less an excerpt from his third novel that he's working on, a novel it's set in colonial Georgia called Blood Brothers. Ethan, before I let you take the floor and read from the excerpt, what should our viewers know about the book before you get started?
So basically, the book starts off with, coming to the state of Georgia, which happened in 1733. And it's following one family, the Sheffield family. And there was a major battle that happened in 1742 on St. Simon's Island called the Battle of Bloody Marsh. Mm-hmm. And there was actually two battles that happened that day. But there were so many deaths from the Spanish soldiers that the marshes actually turned red. I've been to the site, I've been to Fort Frederica, I've been to Fort St. Simon's, and being there, I knew that there had to be a story. So I was like, well, who else is going to write the story but me? So I wrote the story.
Hey, well, that's certainly an intriguing intro for us. And as someone who, according to family legend, the first members of our family came over and helped found Ebenezer, the second Georgia city. So
really,
you have me pulled in thanks to the ghosts of families past. All right, well, Ethan, go ahead and take the floor. So everybody, this is Ethan Bridges, or E.B. Bridges as his pen name is, with an excerpt from his next novel, Blood Brothers.
Their father took his hand and wiped his mouth anxiously. The sound of rough hand and stubble echoed in the quiet room. His eyes were red from crying, his cheeks puffy. He lost his wife and son. He could not lose more. Silence resonated within the room and echoed off the bare walls. Still seething, Edward looked out of the parlor window at the live oak in the yard, his mother and brother buried beneath it. Lightning struck, thunder bellowed. His world of stone and steel came crumbling into an empty void. He had nothing else to live for, and yet he had everything to live for. He would stand up for the honor of his mother and brother, but how? Father, he said. Yes, son. I am leaving to join Governor Oglethorpe's army. He sipped more of his brandy. He felt invincible. A pause. No. The word came crushing in and crumbled just as the deaths of his family. I am going to avenge them. My answer is no. I do not want to lose another member of my family. He stood and went to his son. You mean the world to me. You, James, and Elizabeth. You cannot go. I feel it is my duty. I agree with father, said James, coming around his chair to join them. Edward said, Spanish are coming to Georgia, and all we are to do is let them come, rape our women, and kill our sons. I cannot stand here and abide by those standards. I must avenge my mother and brother. How can you stand there and tell me no? Because I am your father and I forbid it. Jarvis said angrily. Edward scoffed. Do you care nothing of the deaths that happened this day? I do. I care deeply, which is why I wish you not to join such a frivolous cause. Jarvis moved toward his son. He saw the pain within his hazel eyes. I know your pain. I understand what happened to you this day. I understand why you want to join the army, but as your father, a man who has lost his wife and child this day, I beseech you, do not leave this house and join the ranks. Edward stared blankly at his father. I cannot honor you as my father to do that. Jarvis snickered. The brandy has gone to your head, son. I think it best if you lie down. It is not the brandy, said Edward. It is the truth. I am guilty for killing mine own mother, and I feel the only way to repent and absolve myself from this guilt is to avenge her death and join the ranks of Oglethorpe's army and kill those who did wrong to her and killed my youngest brother. No, bellowed Jarvis. He had never shouted before, especially to Edward. The thunder from the outside roared louder. There were flashes of lightning all around. Is that your final word, father? Asked Edward. It is, son. Edward nodded. A glint of lightning gleamed across their faces as it struck the live oak where the mother and son were buried. Sparks of yellow and orange hues flew across the yard. The heat could be felt from inside the house from the blinding light. Jarvis covered his eyes with his forearm. James did the same. Edward threw his glass of remaining brandy into the hearth and hurried from the parlor. Edward, shouted his father, where are you going? He did not bother to answer. His mind was made. He had to leave. He ran out the front door, past the burning oak, raced across the stables where his white gelding dwelled. His mind was stuck on his mission. The rain pommeled down to the soaken earth and mixed the silt with the sand, making the dirt grayer than it usually was. He saddled his horse, lifted his foot into the stirrup, hoisted himself upon the seat, and spurred his heels into the haunches of the gelding. The animal moved forthwith. Edward heard his screaming father running from the house in the pouring rain. He did not look back. He kicked the horse one final time and left from a trot to a gallop within seconds. Down the muddy trail he went. The rain baptized him as a new man.
All right. That is an excerpt from Blood Brothers by E.B. Bridges. Ethan, that sounds fantastic, and I know we can't wait to actually see the finished product. But as this is your third novel, all three of your novels have been set in historic eras. Your first two novels, I believe, are both are Depression era, I believe.
The first one, The Runner, is Depression. When the Bough breaks takes place in the 60s.
Okay, but still not today.
Not today.
And that is an interesting choice to me, because that's you and I were talking before the show started, and we're both big fans of J.R.R. Tolkien, which means world building is something we absolutely love to see in practice. And really, when you write something this far back, you have to do a form of world building with that. So,
yes,
what do you particularly have to do when you're going into these kind of historical stories?
Research, a lot of research. And I don't mean just by going on Wikipedia and looking at different links through there. Especially for this new novel, I actually, I went to Fort Frederica. Parts of the building are still standing. The barracks, parts of that still standing with the tabby concrete and everything. The magazine where the cannons, gunpowder, all that's still standing there. All four cannons are still there. And just a little bit further up is Epworth by the Sea, which is the birthplace of the Methodist Church. So, going to these places and just kind of looking around and seeing, what your imagination can, just bring up. Not only does the research help, but you know, kind of figuring out how your character is going to be. You know, my character Edward, he's very headstrong, but he's a typical teenager. You know, he's 17 years old.
There's
He
some
doesn't
things
know
that
what
are
he wants to do
universal.
with his life.
Right. There's some things that
So
are timeless. Teenagers are going to always be rebellious, no matter what century.
exactly. You know, and you know, we just recently watched The Little Mermaid, and that part where she's like, "I'm 16, I'm not a kid anymore," and I'm like, "Yes, you are." You know, it applies here too. And you know, when he's speaking back to his father, I've been in those situations where, you know, I went against what my father would say, and you know, there's personal experiences in going and writing. But like with The Runner, that was set from 1926 to 1936. You know, I did a little bit less research than I did with Blood Brothers, but that's because, you know, I have like a certain affinity with like the Prohibition era, because, you know, that was just a time in America where we're just like, well, you know, we want to have alcohol, but we can't have it, so we'll have it illegally. And you know, part of that story was my grandfather said that his great grandfather, well, both of them, one was a farmer and the other one made moonshine. So I was like, okay, well, that's the story.
Yeah.
So I created this story. And When the Bough Breaks is the sequel to The Runner, and it takes place with the main character from the first novel, Johnny Turner, his son. But he's going in, looking into the underground mafia in New York. So I actually had to do a lot of research for When the Bough Breaks, because you know, I wanted incorporated a lot of things. I wanted to incorporate, you know, segregation. I wanted to incorporate the JFK assassination. I wanted to incorporate, you know, a lot of musicians' deaths, because the main character, he was a music critic for the New York Times.
Okay.
So I had to go and find all these little things just to piece it together. And especially the ending. The ending is a true story. But you'll have to find that. You'll have to read that yourself.
Yeah, don't give them everything. Don't give them everything. Make them buy the book. And to my viewers, you may not know this, but when I do invite guests on, they do send me what they want to share. And Ethan sent me a couple different things, and through our conversations, we landed on Blood Brothers. But the other stories that you had in mind that were in the running here were a very contemporary setting. So when you're writing fiction, how do you decide whether or not to set something in a historical period or in a contemporary period?
That is actually a loaded question. I actually have a little background in theater. So the way that the stories come about is I'm basing it off a character. So when a character comes to mind, I'm trying to feel what they're feeling. Because like Johnny in my first novel, The Runner, that actually came out as just a voice. This voice I heard in my head, and I'm like, okay, so he's got this deep, gruff, southern drawl, and it's powerful. And I was like, okay, so how can I create this character around the voice? So it depends on the character and how the character wants to come out to me. You know, what the short stories that I sent you, you know, they're more of you know, kind of like me. So I kind of put myself into their situation, and I'm like, okay, well, this is how I was feeling, and how can I make a story out of it? You know, and that's the thing about writing. It's not even really about telling a story. It's about telling a feeling, and how you can express that feeling through words, and then make other people feel that same feeling.
And obviously every writer is very different. I would say I really agree with that from my perspective as a writer on very short works. Short works to me are always more emotionally driven. They're always about the feelings. especially things like flash fiction, things like that, where you're capturing an image and that image has to communicate something. Now, I love when I do longer works, I have a tendency to be much more broader focused. Yes, I have characters and they have emotions, but I love piecing together the story that those people have to go into. But you brought up characters, and on the first episode of this show, Ross Hardy, who was our first guest, really echoed a lot of the same sentiments. You have to understand your character if you're going and then you throw them in the situation, and the story kind of writes itself at that point. And earlier this month on the channel, our episode of the Writer's Desk was very much about that same topic. So I think that for viewers, if you've been watching anything on this channel, you should have picked up at this point. As you start trying to figure out your stories, make sure you know your characters. You don't have to have them fully fleshed out, but you at least got to have a good idea of what they are and where they're going. Now, Ethan, you've got these 2 novels that are already out. Is Blood Brothers close to being out, or do we gotta need to wait a little bit for it?
It's probably going to be a month or 2. I had a slight accident with my old laptop. I have this wonderful cat who likes to knock things over, especially coffee, onto laptops. So I completely lost the whole story except for the hard copy. So I'm having to retype, which is great, because if this works and it becomes successful, then that's going to be my new thing. I'm just going to have to buy a laptop every time I write a novel.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. And where can they find this upcoming book, but also where can they find your first 2 novels?
On Amazon. Right now, The Runner is on Amazon for Kindle and paperback. When the Bough Breaks is also for Kindle and paperback. So, and I actually have a copy of both.
Yeah, I shared with Ethan my copy as well. It's I'm trying to get it off my to read list because it is a fascinating story. So I'm hoping to get to it soon if my book club will allow me to throw one in there. But also, viewers, as I've said each of the last 2 episodes of this, hey, if we're going to have to give Jeff Bezos money, use smile.amazon.com, where some of your of what you spend on the website will actually go to charity. The default is St. Jude's Hospital, but you can change a charity. So if I'll make sure there's a link in the description to both The Runner and When the Bough Breaks. And if by the time this episode airs, Blood Brothers is able to come out, I'll also have a link for that one as well. So Ethan, thank you so much for coming on to 1,000 Words or Less with us today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
We look forward to the new book, and all my readers, Ethan's a wonderfully imaginative talent. Please go out and buy his books, and join us next month on 1,000 Words or Less, and make sure you join us every Sunday here on the channel when we have new content every week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Brice Odom. Our guest has been E.B. Bridges. Thank you everybody for joining us, and y'all have a lovely day.